Really I think gets the most benefit from it is people who are like ready to kind of simplify the agency model. You got a couple of clients, you're humming along, but you're running yourself ragged, working too many hours. What most people do is there's a journey people go through in a high ticket sale. And what most people do is they start with the coldest leads first, and they do that because that's what businesses tell them they want. We have been changing all of our content strategy, or our acquisition strategy, to go from one-to-one chasing clients to almost all exclusively one-to-many. I think we're in. We did it. Excited to see you guys again. You guys are the best ever, in my opinion, my humble, unbiased opinion. That you guys are the coolest people in existence. And I'll tell you, I don't know if any of you guys are like this, but I have a hard time interacting with the general public like I used to. Like people who have no hopes and no dreams and no goals and are just kind of trying to live in for the weekend. And you guys, you build these businesses so that you can have freedom and a life and, be able to experience the world in the way you want to. And that just always makes you really fucking cool in my books. Couple of quick announcements before we get rocking and rolling. First is I'm working on an outreach guide. It is co-authored with Matt McQuinn, many of you know, the founder of Coldlytics. And we are diving into the way that outreach works for us. And I think we have something that many of you guys will never have heard, even though I know a lot of you guys have heard shit tons about outreach. I think there is new stuff in there that will be an advancement forward in how you think about this process and how you use this and how you do this differently than what everybody else says. I'm not saying it's the way to do outreach. I hate when people say, like, this is the way, and if you deviate from the Frankie Finn system, you're going to be a fucking loser for life. It's more like, this is our way that's working really well for us. If you get some good ideas from it, use it. So we're going to put it out there. I don't know exactly when. It depends on how long it takes me to write it, but I'm working on it. I'm about 80% finished. It'll probably be about 30-ish pages. I'm not trying to make it long. There's lots of pictures in there. Just short and on point. Make it as valuable for you guys as I possibly can. So that's kind of that. Also, as I mentioned, like we're reaching capacity in the Wolfpack. So if you guys have been on the fence about joining, like there will be a waiting list soon. So like, don't leave a brother hanging. We got, I think we have the coolest stuff there. And I'll tell you who really I think gets the most benefit from it is people who are like, ready to kind of simplify the agency model. You got a couple of clients, you're humming along, but you're running yourself ragged, working too many hours. And it's just fucking stressful the way most people set it up. And I want to give you back the simplicity of this where you have happy clients and you can do it predictably at scale. And it's always been funny to me, but a $50,000 to $100,000 a month agency run well is less work than a $10,000 to $30,000 a month agency that'll run you ragged. So if that describes you, give a brother a holler. Anyways, let's get into the good stuff. I put some links below for that, by the way. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Frankie Finn proudly brings you our weekly Q&A. The gun show. Who paid their admission price to get to the gun show? What's sad is I've actually been working out the last month. That's what's sad, but I don't know. That's just my body type. Don't hate on the old dad bod. Anyways, let's get into the good stuff. Let's talk questions. Let's talk growing your business. Let's talk about what's on you guys' heart and mind. So George says, so I recently started retooling my SEO agency model from SEO agency to more of a rank and rent SEO model. What would you say about this route? George, my man, firstly, good to see you again. I see you, by the way, super like interactive on our page too, which is awesome. Like we just started like finally making that a priority, and you're our first real fan, so I appreciate you, brother. Firstly, what I wanted to say about that is sometimes a change in model can be an exponential leap forward. We went through this years ago. I went through basically the same change that you're going through. And it started with us where the hardest part about SEO was just selling it and getting clients. And once I had clients, I knew how to rank stuff. So I thought about it, why don't we reverse that? Why don't we rank stuff? And then when I have something ranking, I'll lease it to clients. I'll lease the phone calls or the website and all of that. And I'll tell you Every model has pros and cons. So the pros of it is everything I just described, which is you don't have to wait for clients to hire you. You control it. You can do more black hat shit. Like I would never do black hat stuff on a client directly, but if it's my own shit and I can just burn it to the ground and build another website and buy another domain, like I don't give a fuck. I'll do whatever I need to do to manipulate and win the Google game. So that's the pros. The cons of it is what we found is one of the biggest things that makes a retainer business model work, when it does work, is client selection, is knowing who makes a good client. And what ends up happening if you just try and rent phone calls to anyone, like most of the time they can't close that phone call or those phone calls. They don't know what to do. They're bad at it. And so the leads won't stick and they won't stay as clients, which defeats the purpose. So you still have to know how to pick the right clients, which are usually people, like I say, like if you think about this, it's more about helping winners win more. So it's like you want to contact the roofing company that's already crushing it and saying, I have another lead source and I'd love to rent it to you, rather than trying to get that single solo roofer who hasn't been able to make the business work at scale and trying to like, hey, I'll give you leads and I'll blow it up. It's counterintuitive because our first thought is to sell business to people who need it, but you actually want to sell it to people who don't need it. And if you do that, like the rank and rent model works really well in my experience. Having said that, our biggest mistake that we made is we didn't think about that enough, and we would rent leads to guys who didn't, like we would send them some freebies and let them try it out, and they couldn't fucking close it to save their life. They didn't call people back. They didn't answer the phone. They didn't show up when we had roofers who would like, hey, I'll come give you a quote on Friday, and then just no show on Friday. Hey, why don't you show up on Friday? Sorry, man, I got shit-faced. I'll go there on Sunday. Like, no, it's not a lead. They already found someone else, right? So that's my experience with it. I'm not saying that will for sure be yours, but there's pros and cons to every model. But if you can choose the right clients to lease those leads to, it's a way better model because you don't have to wait to get hired, and that's cool. Our man Dan says, cheers, Frankie. The only thing with doing it that way, wouldn't you be relying on the client restaurant owner to do the tracking for you as this all happens at their end? This is, in my totally unexperienced eyes, could raise a few issues, which I don't want to go into here. Would it be possible in the ad to set up an instant form or even place a call to action directly to customers straight to the reservation page? Feel free to tell me I'm talking bollocks. I'm just trying to see if there are other ways without using out of my league price software. I don't even own/run an agency yet. Still learning the ropes. Cheers, mate. So here's the deal, Dan. For those of you guys who missed the little bit of backstory, there was a conversation where they asked, somebody asked, like, if you're doing like a revenue share with a client, like how do you track it? And almost always people are looking for a technical answer to that question. They're saying, do I use Go High Level? Do I use forms? Do I set up an affiliate software and tracking links? And all of those things are valid, so I'm not saying like not to do those, but what I found, the easiest way that I found to track it is to create a unique offer so that everybody who claims that unique offer 100% came from you. And the easiest way to do that is take an offer that's already working in the business and like kind of pimp it a little bit, for lack of a pimp my offer. So we were using the example restaurants, like say there's a pizza place and they got 2 large pizzas, 2 toppings each, $24.99, and that's selling. Then take that same offer, add a Pepsi and some cheesy bread, and maybe make it $25.99. And then what happens is when you go sell that in the real world, the 2 large pizzas with the Pepsi and the cheesy bread, well, everybody who fucking ordered it because of you, because you created that offer, right? So it wouldn't make sense that it came from anywhere else except for you, because you're the one who created it, you're the one promoting it. So there's always variations of things you can do like that in any business by just getting a little creative and taking an offer they have and just adding a slight twist. Usually my go-to is just add in some kind of little bonus, right? Like think about bonus looks different in various industries. In our world, it might be a PDF. In the restaurant world, it might be, an extra piece of bread or something. In the contractor, it might be get a Starbucks gift card if you get a quote on your house or whatever. But always just like some little unannounced bonus. Now, having said that, what Dan is alluding to is when you do revenue share deal, there is always the possibility that you can get screwed. And what most people don't realize, by the way, this same possibility exists in a retainer. Like a client can agree to pay you $2,000 a month and then halfway through just stop fucking paying you, right? Like that same, or even like way sooner, but like that risk is always there. So the way to manage risk intelligently, in my point of view, is not to deny that it exists, is to set up a way to manage it. And I wrote about this extensively in the book here, but there's a reason why I plug first dates so much. So if you're going to do a revenue share deal, like say with a restaurant in this case, and I'm creating a unique offer, one of the like 2 or 3 things I'm looking for on that first date is, do you fucking pay me and on time, right? Because if they don't, there's no second date, there's no third date. Like, I feel like that trust is earned. So we've tried to do revenue share deals where you get into their back end, in their details, in their tracking, in their numbers, in their sales. And I'm not saying you can't do that, but fuck, does it ever add a lot of complexity? Just run a first date, and if they don't pay you, there's no second date, right? And if they do, then you trust them with a little bit more and you do a second date. And then when they have a history of proving to pay you for the money you make them, then you don't need all that tracking and stuff like that. So the missing piece is actually a partner you can trust that does what the fuck they say they're going to do. And the way I find that the fastest is just to test them. George, my man, I see your question. It was actually the first question we just answered. So I'm going to send you back to the replay. Unfortunately, my man, because I just spent like a good 3-4 minutes going on a rant about the rank and rent model and your specific question. I didn't forget it, by the way. I have a Google Doc that I add the weekly questions to, and so I added you there. Anyways, so Dan, back to your question is like, yes, you can get screwed. So what you want to do is manage that risk. Like, test them to see, are they going to actually pay you? Because if they don't pay you in a small scale, like, they ain't going to be good to their word on a big scale. Having said that, having done this a lot, people are mostly good. Like, if you usually make them money, they're happy to give you something. So I find, like, the worst case scenario is usually they pay you, but late. And when they pay you and it's late, I just don't work with them more, right? Like, because it's like, hey, I don't want to have to chase you for money. I made you money. You know, give me my cut kind of thing. Having said that, like the first date solves most of those problems. So that's how I manage it. Having said that, I mean, there is a lot of tracking stuff you can do. It was my experience, like, and I'm not saying this is true for everybody, but fuck, I hate managing tech. Like, I don't know if any of you guys that are out there feel like I do, but I've been learning 10 to 30 new pieces of software every year for 16 years. And every year there's fucking new software, and all of it has a learning curve, and all of it has some bugs where it doesn't fucking 100% work like it's supposed to, and all of it like changes over time. So I'm like so sick of learning software and tools. So I think about how can I eliminate the software and tools, and I just track it the old-fashioned way. Hey, we create a unique offer for you. Everybody who comes from that fucking unique offer came from me, and pay me for everybody that comes to that unique offer. And that's really it. We keep it like super simple. Thomas says, despite all the hype about GHL, are there any people using other methods to manage and nurture leads? I don't really like Go High Level. I know there are other ways, but it means a lot of going around, headache, and management that I'll probably go with Go High Level. Just curious your experience if you did both. Interestingly enough, my man, Tomas, we have a ton of people in the mastermind using Go High Level. A lot of people love it. It's good software. The people who use it love it, swear by it. I am like you. Fuck, I hate learning new software. I hate learning new tools. And so, for me, I always look for a less software solution, not more. So I'll tell you what we do. One of the things we have is what we call our warm client follow-up. And these are people who have expressed interest in our leads specifically. In fact, now that I mention it, I'm just going to open up a tab because I actually have ChatGPT write these. But one of the ways that we follow up with people who said, hey, I'm interested in your services and didn't close. By the way, we follow up with those people forever. Either they tell us to fuck off or they eventually buy, sometimes a year or two later, but it doesn't matter. We follow up with those people inevitably. So what we do with those people is direct mail with click-to-mail and send them old-fashioned letters in the mail. I know, it's crazy, especially too when you guys are starting out. You might only have a dozen people who've expressed interest in your stuff, and following up those people with click-to-mail costs $1 a letter. So like, there's no software or tools needed. You send them a letter in the mail, and you can personalize it to everybody at scale. It costs $1 a letter, so it's like $12 to do follow-up. I also am a big believer. We've used Aweber for a lot of years, so it started with me. I used Aweber in the very early days of the internet because everyone said it had the best deliverability and it was super cheap to get started. And I started using them as my email autoresponder. And then other shit came out that had like way more features and way more benefits. There was like, Active Campaign and Infusionsoft and Entreport and, you know, Kajabi and all these kind of things. And they're all like had more features and they were cooler. And so I switched over to Active Campaign, and I've tried them all through, you know, through clients and things like that. And what I found out was I started measuring that in ActiveCampaign and these other tools, it just took me longer to write a fucking email. It took me longer to write an email and send it to a client and follow up with them. And so after all these years, I went back to Aweber, and I love the simplicity of it. I'm not saying that that is the answer for everybody, but that's how I like to do it. Just direct mail, good old-fashioned email. Having said that, a lot of the reason why people like Go High Level, and I think it is one of the most sophisticated uses of it, is you can be multi-channel. You can text a client, then send them an email, then set up a mailer. Like, it connects to a lot of tools. I'd be surprised if it didn't like directly connect with click to mail and some sort of template you have. You may be able to follow up with a client 3 different ways and automate that. So that's probably a more sophisticated setup than we're doing it. But the longer I do this, the more I'm like, fuck tools. How can I get tools out of my life, not add them in? So I hope that's helpful. George says, okay, no worries. Next question. I'm doing a mommy makeover rank and rent site. Can you speak to the process of transitioning the website leads to the surgeon, call tracking, warm leads, handoffs? I'll just tell you how we did it, George. It depends. Like, the more you do to help the sale along, the more you're going to get paid. So if you have a warm lead handoff, as you mentioned, you're going to get paid more money than if you just say, here's somebody's contact info. All we did is just set up fill out a form on a website and a call tracking number and forwarded it to them, and not get into their business and not get into the details. And we would send them a couple of leads for free as like, hey, we want to sell you this rank and rent thing. Why don't you try a couple of leads, see if you get any business from it, see if they're decent leads. And then you send them 7 days worth of stuff. And if it works, you become partners and you do it. And if it doesn't, you do it long term. That's how I've always done it. I'm not saying that's the perfect way. If I was probably going to redo it, because we don't do rank and rent currently, but if I was going to redo it, I probably would do the warm lead handoff, because you'll make more money because they'll actually close and you'll be able to charge more for it. And there's a lot of services you can outsource to do that. Our man Matt Coffee has one. They have a whole team of people in the Philippines that will call your leads within a minute and follow up with them and direct live transfer. And I think they charge $15 per booked appointment. So you don't even have to pay unless it's booked in a client's calendar. There's no setup fees. There's no usage. So if you're interested in that, connect with him. Feel free to name drop me and, brag about the size of my Canadian balls. Maybe that last part might be optional. Anyways, our man Jake says, wanted to ask you about your best offers have been lately to get the foot in the door for first meetings. Shameless plug, I run a VA office in Cebu City. If you want some collectors, I can pimp my workers to you if need be. There we go, George. I'd probably say Jake has some warm lead handoff right there too. So my thought with foot in the door, Jake, and this is like universally true across industries, what most marketers think the way to get the foot in the door is to make bigger, what I call assholey marketer promises. So I just had a guy the other day, he cold messaged me and said, our booked appointment service can add an extra $300,000 to $500,000 per month to your thing, like basically hire us. And it was, besides that was a marriage offer, like the size of the promise of like, I'm gonna add $500,000 a month to like, that is, I think, a sizable promise, especially if you haven't like vetted people and chosen them carefully and you're just mass broadcasting to everybody, which he was, that I'm going to add an extra $500,000 a month to your business. I'm going to add $6 million a year with our outreach service. And so what happens is, like, even if he got me as a client, my expectations are so crazy sky high that he can't possibly succeed on it. The other thing is, like, most of the people who fall for that shit, for lack of a better term, are either new or idiots. Right? Like, new people fall for it because they just don't know better. But fucking idiots, like, if you go to a 20-year business, they know better. They've been pitched shit like that. All of it disappointed them. They're skeptical of it. So it's only, like, beginners and idiots that fall for it. So you don't end up with, like, really, like, well-off financial clients. So what I always do is, like, what is the smallest, most meaningful result that I could get you? So if you think about that, and feel free to use this as a guideline, Jake. But if you think about Matt's VAs, in this case, they're customer service VAs that help connect appointments. Like, that's a one small meaningful result. I'll get you a booked appointment on your calendar for $15, right? But what does somebody want after they pay you $15 for an appointment? Can you do that for all of them, right? So it can easily be a $2,000 to $3,000 a month offer hidden in disguise for the right person. But it comes with one small meaningful result. I'll get you one person in the calendar for this price. So that's an example of how I think about it. And you can do this in all sorts of variations depending on what your VAs do. If they do, graphic design, like the first thing I might do is like, whatever the most useful thing that they need. Like say they're YouTube creators like I am, like the most useful thing is like, let me make a bitchin' thumbnail, right? But it's something, it only takes you 5 minutes to do, but is super valuable to them. And then it leads into like, hey, can you just do all my thumbnails for us kind of thing, right? But pro tip, I got a guy on that, so I probably wouldn't do that. But in this case, just giving you an example of how you can use that is like, always think small but meaningful result. And the way I think about the small but meaningful results, this also may be useful, is what most people do is there's a journey people go through in a high ticket sale. And what most people do is they start with the coldest leads first, and they do that because that's what businesses tell them they want. What I do is I start at the opposite. I go, what's the closest to the sale? So like in the case when I would do this for personal injury lawyers, when I first started out, I would just send a couple emails inviting their past clients to refer them somebody and just say, hey, thank you, we appreciate you. We're going to give them free VIP help. They get a free consultation. And that was it. Like, but I did that because I'm like, that's the closest to the sale. I also like, we've done retargeting stuff with them or help them with, hey, do you ever get people who call on the phone but don't book a consultation? Well, let us work that segment because that's somebody who's like almost all the way to buying, right? So in general, when I think about creating a small but meaningful result for somebody, and the best small but meaningful result is always one of something, right? So like what most people do is I'm going to add $500,000 a month, but one of something is one call, $15, one appointment, one thumbnail, one, hey, let me send one message to the people who called you but didn't book an appointment, right? So when you're thinking about creating that foot in the door, what I call a first date offer, it's always like, what's the smallest one of something meaningful I can bring you? And that's basically, to me, what your first date should always be. Where'd I go with this? Let me just grab the next question here. Paul says, what works best for home improvement, trades, Google ads, or Facebook ads, such as someone selling kitchen remodeling? So we have people using both for trades, both Google and Facebook, and there's reasons to do both. The reason to do Google is it's more expensive in general, but it's also for you as an agency, it's way more set and forget, meaning when you find ads that work and you get an angle and you get an offer, like you can sometimes run with that same offer for like years and years and years with changing it. The flip side of Facebook is you can get way cheaper leads, but there's more massaging and sales needed, but you can get way more of them cheaper, right? You can get Facebook leads for $10 and you can get, if you have some really good ads in the right area. And Google, you might not even be able to get clicks for $10. But having said that, like there's merit to both. So it's not a question to me of like which one works. It's a question of like, which one are you best at? Which one are you most comfortable at fulfilling? And what I would suggest is don't do it for all trades. Focus on one specialty service they offer. So we got a guy in the mastermind, you mentioned it actually, that he does kitchen remodeling, right? He doesn't try to sell like, I'm going to get you basement jobs. I'm going to get you deck jobs. I'm going to get tile repairs. I'm going to get you bathrooms. Just one thing. I'm going to get you kitchen remodelings. And this is his basic strategy, which could work in any industry, is he targets the affluent areas and says, like, here's some examples of our work. If you're interested in getting your kitchen remodeling, we'll get you a free quote. And then people fill out the form and say, I'm interested in getting a quote. And then the contractors have to go out and quote the jobs, and they land some of them and lose some of the other jobs. But that's basically the gist of the process. By the way, different Paul. This is back-to-back Pauls, but different Paul. With the discussions around personal branding versus business branding, I'm wondering which one of our members here use to target prospects. So let me tell you, like this is a download on where Frankie Finn is at. I'm going to tell you guys a story that will change your perspective on this. So for a lot of years, I listened to guys like Dan Kennedy and Jay Abraham, and Perry Marshall is a big influencer on me, and they are all direct response guys. And a direct response, guys, if you're not familiar with that term, is very simple. It's like anytime you run an ad, there is an offer, and so you measure, is it working, whether or not people respond to the offer. Sometimes it's a lead in, like, hey, download my lead magnet, and we measure like how many people opted in for the lead magnet. Sometimes it's a buy my shit, or sometimes it's get a free quote, or sometimes it's like book a call with me. But we're actually measuring something very, very specific as an action. And most of those guys, for the most part, laugh at branding shit because the way most corporations do branding is big, dumb, and stupid. And they spend a lot of money and they win awards for advertisements that don't sell shit. And so I kind of laughed at branding for a lot of years and thought it was the dumbest thing in the world. And I'll tell you what changed my mind was actually the Gary Vee. I saw him speak in San Diego, and he said, the real secret is when you use direct response and branding together, what happens is you build a name. And I saw this the other day. There was an ad run by Grant Cardone, and it was in my news feed. And I don't remember what old Grant was offering. And I remember looking at the offer and thought, this is actually kind of a shitty offer. It's very unspecific and it's generic, but I guarantee you here's why it's working, is because brand, you already know who the fuck Grant Cardone is before you saw that ad. And so you're not opting in because like the copy's so brilliant or the offer, because you're interested in learning more from this particular guy. And a brand to me simply comes down to repetition. Now, I experienced this in the personal injury space. When we first started, we were trying to crack personal injury lawyers with webinars and Facebook ads. So I run Facebook ads, say sign up for my webinar. People would watch a webinar, book a call with us, and some of those people would become clients. That was the basic funnel. And what we found is, in the beginning, none of our ads worked all that well. And it's partly because you don't know your audience, you don't know what to offer them. But after like 8 months, pretty much everything we ran worked. And I don't think it's entirely because we got better at messaging, though we did. I'm convinced at least part of that was because they got used to seeing our name. Like we advertised to the same people over and over and over, month after month after month after month after month after month after month. And all of a sudden you're not a fly-by-night operation. You become a little more legit. A lot of you guys have been advertised to by Sam Ovens and thought, there's real power in this. So I'll tell you the way that I like using branding. And it's creating what I call inception in buyers. And I learned this from our man, Dennis Yu. And this is some next level shit that I don't think most even direct response advertisers. And I'll give you a simple example of the story that Dennis told me. Okay, so Dennis said he had a client who was trying to get their physical product sold in Walmart. They were an e-commerce store and they wanted to get their stuff sold in Walmart. Why get sold in Walmart? Because you'll sell 1 billion of them and Walmart has a crazy amount of distribution. Now, what happened is they cold pitched Walmart, and Walmart said nothing, because that's the most common response to outreach, is you get ghosted a lot. And it's nothing against them and their pitch. It's just like Walmart gets 1,000 pitches a day. It just got ignored. So they created what Dennis calls his $1 per day advertising campaign, and they created campaigns on every single ad platform, including the ones most people don't advertise on, like Twitter and LinkedIn and Pinterest and those kind of places, right? And they also did like the Google and the YouTube and the Facebook ads. And so they created ads on TikTok and all of these things. And they spent $1 per day on each of those platforms, except for like a few of them like have a minimum of like $5 a day. But for the most part, they're spending like $10 a day on ads. And they picked one targeting option on every single platform. They picked the zip code where Walmart headquarters was located. And they ran ads to Walmart HQ for 6 months, over and over, $10 a day. So like half a year, what are we talking? Like 180 days. So they spent maybe like $2,000 on ads for Walmart. Then they went back and cold pitched Walmart in their email again and said, we'd like to get our product sold in your store. And Walmart said, well, of course, we've all heard of your stuff. Your shit is everywhere. Walmart would love to be a distributor of your stuff. And that is the power of a brand. Because without that 6 months of inception advertising, of making sure that they know who they are. So I think the smartest way of using branding is a mix of business and personal, and using it to intentionally put your shit in front of buyers and being omnipresent and allowing enough time to go by where they think they found you. And a lot of you guys, by the way, don't know it, but you guys are here in this community because I've done that to you guys, where a few of you guys say, hey, I saw you in this mastermind, I saw you in this course, I saw you in this thing, and then I've been seeing your ads everywhere. I'm like, that's Big Daddy branding you over here. But I'm not saying like a cow, like I don't see you guys as cow, like I don't stick you with the metal thing, but I know that once you express interest, I make sure my shit, as best I can gets in front of you. So that's kind of what we're doing. And so I'm a big believer. The longer I do this, I used to laugh at all the branding people, and now I'm like, man, how would you do this without a brand? I think it's such an advantage because essentially what a brand creates is that people already know who you are before you walk in the door, and then everything gets easier if they already know who you are. They know what your business is, and they know what you do. You don't have to hard sell anybody. Like if I reached out to some of the legends I mentioned, Jay Abraham and Dan Kennedy and all those people, and I got them, I get on a call to them potentially sell me. Like I already know who they are, what they do. Like they're gonna have an easy time closing me, right? And that's what you ultimately want. Jake says, just wanted to say I've never listened to an audiobook so fast, and I already had purchased the regular book. My man, appreciate it. This, what's awesome about this book? I just gotta say, when I wrote this baby, I actually had the idea come to me in the German forest. I was walking, taking my daughter Heidi, and I had the idea I was going to write this book. And I kind of just sketched out the skeleton of the chapters, and I started just recording myself speaking on the phone and recorded it. And my whole thought process is, it's funny because a lot of times when people write a book, they say, I want to become a best-selling author. And it's all like these ego things of like, I'm going to be amazing, I'm going to be famous, I'm going to sell 1 million books. I remember thinking, if this is not a big niche. If there's just one digital marketing agency out there that would get benefit and not have to do all the stupid shit I did, that would be worth it. That was my whole thought. Just if this book benefits one person, it's worth writing. And that was it. And it's funny to me because now I get messages, like every week I get like a thank you or a appreciation message in the old inbox from people who say it's helped them. I've even had people tell me like, hey, we got to 7 figures or close to it in our agency just from reading your book, which still boggles the mind that kind of stuff happens. And I just want you guys to know, I genuinely appreciate you. Part of the reason I do this is I have an insane amount of empathy for you guys. I always say it's easy for me to do that because I am you guys. I've been through all the shit, you guys. I'm still going through it. I still live it. And so, I don't know. I just think you guys are the coolest people, and I love and appreciate what it is you guys are building, what you do, and all that. So enough bragging about you guys. We got more questions. Let's get rocking and rolling here. Ben says, does everyone just use their plain old email account to send their cold outreach? I think I ruined my deliverability by spray and pray email blasting prospects in the early stages, wondering what other people's approaches are. Firstly, Ben, this is my shameless plug for the fact that I mentioned we are writing an outreach guide, me and Matt McQuinn, Matt McQuinn and I, if I want to be grammatically correct. It's about 80% finished. It'll be dropping, I hope, this week, if not, next week. And I'm just going to give you the whole system that we're using. I'll tell you, the longer I do this, I don't give a fuck about spray and pray advertising. I think there's 3 stages you go through in the process of outreach. Stage 1 is when you're first starting out and you're just trying to get any client, and so you don't really have super strict client criteria, which, by the way, creates all kinds of problems later. And so you're just mass blasting spray and pray, like I hope somebody anywhere, any place, anytime would just hire me, and you're just throwing a massive amount of spaghetti at the walls, hoping something would stick. Then you reach a stage 2 where it has worked enough that you've started to do work for people, and now your work, if you've done the job right, is starting to speak for yourself, and people are coming to you. And so you kind of get a little, I don't want to say lazy, but probably complacent, where you don't really chase work as hard because work finds you whether you want it to or not, just your name and reputation, and there's certain people who are happy with your work and share your stuff, and that's level 2. And then level 3 is when you start saying, who do I really want to work with? It's kind of close to the Dream 100 kind of ideology, and you start picking specific targets instead of spraying and praying. Now you're shotgunning or sniper rifling it and picking off specific targets. An example of this, by the way, I read a book by Jack Canfield. Many of you guys know him as the Chicken Soup for the Soul guy. And he sold 1 million books in one day, and he did it by getting on Oprah. And he describes in the book the process he went to get on Oprah. Now, obviously, the busier and more successful person you go after, the more work it is. So originally, this is what they did. They found Oprah's producer, they wrote her a cold outreach pitch, and they pitched her, put us on the show. And what happened is nothing, because that's what often happens with outreach. So then they started going, well, who else makes decisions at Oprah? And they started pitching them too. And once a month, they would write a pitch. And they got ignored. So then they started saying, we need to know everybody that works at Oprah. And they got a list, and they found out there were 80 team members at Oprah. They got a list of all 80 team members. And they found out something about each person. And they started sending a gift in the mail. And they did this, by the way, this is the part that I want you to understand, for 5 fucking years. And then finally Oprah said, come on the show. Imagine they had given up after 2.5 years. People said, you're crazy, you'll never get on Oprah. So what ended up happening is after 5 years, Oprah said, come on the show. He sold 1 million books in like an hour. And then not only that, it became easier to get on shows again because like, hey, this book's been featured on Oprah. Oh shit, it's been on Oprah. Well, of course we'll have you on NBC News, ABC News, whatever. And so he sold a shit ton of books, but he didn't just like randomly start doing outreach. He like picked specifically, I'm after Oprah. And I think that's the smartest way to do outreach. And I'm going to write about this in more detail in the guide. But I'm a big believer that the point of outreach is not to chase deals one-to-one, but it's to create one-to-many opportunities for yourself. A small example of this, and there's a lot more, I'm going to go into more detail on the guide. But like, would you rather message 10,000 dentists? Or would you rather message one podcast person who has an audience of 10,000 dentists, create one episode with them, and then get in front of 10,000 dentists simultaneously? If it's me, I ain't messaging 10,000 dentists. I'm messaging the one podcast person. And there's so many examples of this, and I'll go into it in the guide in more detail. I said it's about 30 pages, including pictures, but I'll show you how we do it, and hopefully you guys will get some cool stuff from it. Jake says, if you're going to run those $1-a-day retargeting ads, would you run them with an offer or would it be more of a brand flexing? Also, great idea on the writing. I was just thinking I should change our content strategy to transcribe my phone calls and client calls and providing real value. Hell yeah. Jake, I'm not saying this is the right answer for everybody, but what I do is a mix of branding and direct response ads. So, for example, and this, like, I learned this from Dennis Yu, but like our process is really simple. So I'll give you a real example rather than talk about it theoretically. So I did this with Jay Abraham. Many of you guys know Jay Abraham. The guy's like been doing this 40, 50 years. He's a mentor to Tony Robbins, pays him. Damon John from Shark Tank. Like a lot of the who's who all go to Jay, sit down with him in his office, and Torrance and his awesome assistant Desiree and all that. And he gets, by the way, gets paid $250,000 a year to consult, often plus a percentage of what it works. So like you got to write $250,000 check just to talk to Jay. That's the level he's playing the game at. And one of the things that I did is step one of that is to co-create content with somebody like that. So they have their own audience, they have their own followers, they have their own buyers. So that's like step one for me in the strategy. Then step two is once that content is recorded, I chop it up into many micro pieces. So I have a video editor. His name's Mark. He's probably watching this right now. Mark, appreciate you. What Mark does is then turns that into like, I don't know, a dozen videos, let's say. So now we have a dozen little videos of Frankie and Jay talking together. Then we take those videos and we put them into the paid ad machine. So in our case, we're using YouTube primarily. And this is the important detail. The people I show those ads to are Jay Abraham's audience because those people already know him, but they do not know me. And so when they see us together in advertising form, you know, my status goes from like way down here and Jay up here to like suddenly like at least in his audience eyes, like Frankie and Jay on similar footing. And then in addition to those dozen content ads, I mix in like one or two direct offers. So it's always cycling. They see more branding than anything else, but every now and then, like there's an offer come in. And, you know, we get people who come through that kind of thing. So that's how I do content these days. I'm not saying that's the right answer for everybody, but I learned that from Dennis Yu. It's the basis of his $1 per day strategy. And it creates this inception thing where people like Jay's audience go, hey, I found you, even though in reality, I put myself in front of them. But yeah, co-create content with influencers, turn it into shorts, retarget the influencers, and then also like, you know, mix in some direct response ads. That's how I do it now. And this is it's a good model if you're selling something very expensive and therefore you want the perceived status to be able to do it, right? Like in Jay's case, there's a lot of status and positioning that goes into being able to sell a $250,000 consulting thing. So I want to be on that level. So I'm the $250,000 consultant guy. It requires some positioning and kind of forethought, but you got the gist of it. I'm not saying that's the right answer for everybody, but I'm just telling you today where I'm at, that's how we run ads. Josh says, what's the one breakthrough strategy that skyrocketed your agency's growth 2023? Share your secret to success. I wouldn't say there's one secret, my man, but I'll tell you, like, a game changer for us is we have been changing all of our content strategy, or our acquisition strategy to go from one-to-one chasing clients to almost all exclusively one-to-many. So it's a mixture of paid ads and outreach to people with audiences. It's really those two things that are bringing us people. When we do outreach to people with audiences, what happens is, as we just mentioned in the example below or before, when I advertise to Jay Abraham's audience or co-create stuff with him, like, it gives me a chance to be in their flow. And so I think it's the smartest way to do outreach, as I mentioned probably 10 times already, but it's going to be in that guide, and you guys feel free to swipe it. I'm just going to put it out. It'll be free, by the way, so those of you guys who are just starting out, you don't have to worry about it. And I'm going to show you how we write the messages, and more importantly, who we decide to send the messages to. And then and when you combine those two things, you'll just have a better overall experience, I think. Joseph says, good morning. We're thinking of starting some cold outreach, outbound campaigns for our agency. Up to this point, all of our leads have come from inbound and referrals. What software are you all using for lead scraping, email validation, cold outreach? Thanks in advance. This is what I'm going to mention, Joseph, is that in the outreach guide, like I said, I think most people jump to spray and pray advertising and thinking about, I have to get my shit in front of as many dentists as possible. And I think it's a much better idea to select the dentists that are most likely to buy and then be more strategic in how you approach those ones. And the reason I say this is because in every industry, it doesn't matter which one you're in. If you pick any random 10 people, any random 10 dentists, any random 10 roofers, any random 10 e-commerce store owners, I'd say on average, 8 of them will never buy your shit or anyone else's. They just do not hire agencies. They do not hire marketing services. They just fucking don't. Like, that's just the nature of the beast. And so what I think is half the battle is eliminating those 8 people and being left with the 1 or 2 who spend all the money and then focusing all your efforts. And I don't think people do enough exclusion in this process, eliminating the people that aren't worth your fucking time to begin with. They may be like nice people. Like, I'm not saying you should never talk to them for other reasons, but they make for bad business partners in this game because they don't spend money and they don't believe in what you do, and they're never going to hire those things. Like, you see this in the legal space where a lawyer will say, well, I've survived 40 years on referrals and word of mouth. Well, don't try and sell that guy Facebook ads because he ain't bought it for 4 decades, and he probably ain't going to buy it for 4 more decades, right? So we want to focus on the people who do and spend all the money. And what you'll find is, like, it's a lot easier to then direct your thing. So almost always people, they start adding servers and complexity and all this shit. And what I think you need to do is actually just start with a good list of people who are proven to spend money. And that's usually less. So I describe that as less but better agency lead generation. And we're going to talk about that in our stuff and maybe more your style. If you want to get into the servers and stuff, Matt McQuinn has detailed how to do that. And we got a couple of guides. John Marenko contributed some stuff in there as well. But for the most part, like, I don't think that is step 1. I don't think step 1 is, like, I just sent it from my shitty ass old Gmail. Like, still 20 years later, it still works. Jake says, is there any reason you prefer a Google Doc over a sales page? Are you ever worried that you make it too easy for your competition to steal your sauce? Good question, my man. Why a Google Doc? So I have a mentor, and he's kind of my style. Many of you guys know him. His name's Travis Sago. And one of the things is the longer I do this, the more I believe in doing stuff like low tech. And I'll tell you why. Like, one of the things that Travis said is, like, one of the things you can do, and this is actually a genesis of that. He said, rather than, like, what most people try and do is, like, they create a webinar. And if you've ever created a webinar before, like, it's a lot of fucking work. You got to have slides, and you got to have, like, polished presentation, and you got to have pictures, and you got to have examples of all your shit, and you got to have all those things kind of lined up. And it often takes, like, even if you've done this before a bunch, it takes you a week to create a webinar and, like, record it. And sometimes people take a fucking month. And he said, if you just do something low tech where you just get on a Q&A and just start answering people's questions, like, yeah, it's probably not 1-to-1 better than a webinar, but you can do 10 of those in the time it takes somebody to do one webinar, and the collective effect of answering people's questions 10 times is more valuable than one single webinar, even though they both took you the same amount. So the longer I do this, the more I do shit like really low tech, Google Docs, Loom videos. The reason I do that, and the other thing is, I think especially the Loom videos, it makes you relatable because it's a real human talking, not a polished presentation, but rather just a human talking to you kind of 1-to-1. And for high ticket stuff, I find it works really well. I wouldn't necessarily like use a Google Doc if I was trying to sell a mass market thing, but I'm not. It's a very kind of selective kind of niche. And as far as like, am I worried about competition stealing stuff? I'm not, and I'll tell you why. It's because I've already been stolen from many times. And what I find is, like, I remember once, like, the funniest of all the being stolen from, I had a lady who, I wrote this long 7 things you need to, like, build, like, one of the world's top law practices. And I just talked about, like, things I had seen in common from all the top law practices. And she copied it word for word. And it was like a long, detailed post. And she added one sentence at the end, thing number 8, hire me. And, of course, gave me none of the credit. I've had people copy my webinars. I've had people copy our ads. And here's the reason why I'm not worried, because I innovate. I think innovation is part of, like, it's a necessary part of this. Like, I know everybody wants to have like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 copy and paste system, but if you copy and paste somebody else's system, your business and you are going to be a clone of somebody else, and eventually there's going to be too many people that are clones of the same thing that it won't work. I saw this when Ty Lopez sold a social media marketing roofing course. He sold 60,000 copies of it, and he told everyone, use this outreach script. Well, now that the roofers get pitched still with that same script 100 times a day, it doesn't fucking work anymore. So for me, like, I understand that innovating is part of the deal. And I'll tell you, innovation comes from understanding the principles of the game, because there's tactics. That's what most people are interested in. Just tell me what tactics to do. There are strategy, which is a level above it, and there are principles. And I'll give you an example of this so you understand why I'm not worried about it. One of the principles that never ever fucking changes is if you're creating video or content stuff on social media, you have to do something to grab people's attention. Now, there's a really smart Facebook ads guy named Keith Krantz, and there was like a period of time where he started his ads going like this, like furiously waving his hands. Stop here, read my ad. And that's how he started his ads. And he did that, and there was like a month, at least on my Facebook newsfeed, where hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people copied Keith, and they were all doing the fucking hand wave. So like for a month, every Facebook ad was a marketer going, stop here and read my shit. And then of course, once you've seen it 100 times, it immediately gets ignored. But what doesn't change is the principle of like, I have to do something to get your attention. So if you understand that, I can create endless number of fucking ways to get somebody's attention, right? Like I can hold up a sign. This is not really a sign. My daughter colored me a mermaid. But if I had a sign of like some boobies on it, let's see, she doesn't have a nice rack. But if we could hold up something like that, like I could grab people's attention, right? Or I could make the video upside down, or I could make it flash colors, or I could, show a picture of Homer Simpson. Like there's a million ways I could do it. So if you understand the principles, you can innovate faster than people can copy you. So like I don't lose sleep over people copying me. People who copy you, by the way, it's a form of flattery, but they very rarely do well with copying because they usually miss the deeper strategy. I'll tell you where I saw this. A lot of you guys saw Alex Hermosi crush a webinar, and all these people in our space, like there was nothing but people talking about Alex Hermosi for a week. Nobody could stop talking about him in his webinar. And I saw a bunch of people say, I'm going to copy his webinar and I'm going to give away the course materials for free, just like he did. And I'm not saying that's not a bad idea, but they missed the part where he promoted 2 years worth of videos to get people on that webinar. Like if you just copy the one piece, you miss the overall strategy behind it, and it won't work for you the same way, right? Like, so that's why I'm saying, like, if you understand the principles that don't change over time, like, hey, you got to get somebody's attention, you have endless number of tactics you can invent. So, like, I don't lose sleep over it personally. Josh says, do you use SOPs in your agencies? If so, how do you document them? For those of you guys who aren't familiar with the term, SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedure, and it is basically a fancy term for a list of instructions for how you do something. Now, if you got a small agency where you're probably 20 clients or less, this is probably not terribly important to you in the moment. But as you get bigger, it becomes like almost the most important thing. Like if you think about a franchise like McDonald's, I've been to Beijing, China, and like the way they make a burger in fucking McDonald's in Beijing, China is like pretty much the same as they do in Paris, France. Is pretty much the same way as, small town America, pretty much the same as South America. And why? Because they have a detailed process that must be followed again and again. And this becomes important as you get bigger. So an SOP is really just a set of instructions. And I make our instructions one of 2 ways. Way number 1 is if I'm doing a repetitive tasks and I don't want to do this over and over, I fire up Loom or some equivalent screen recording software and I record myself doing the task and explain how it works. And then I give those instructions for somebody else to copy me later. And then way number 2 is there is a plugin called tango.us. There's a free version, and you just do the task. You hit record on Tango and you just do the task, and it'll create a document with the instructions, and then we copy and paste those instructions into a Google Doc. And then we take, whether it's a video or a doc, sometimes we have both, we put those into our project management software. We use Asana, and then whatever employee is assigned to that task always has access to the instructions to go back to again and again and again, so that it always gets done our way. This becomes more important as you scale, by the way, and that's how we do it. So hope that's helpful to some of you guys. Last question we got on the docket. Liv says, invoicing versus subscription/automatic billing. How do you politely ask your clients to switch from regular monthly invoicing to a subscription automatic billing type setup to improve cash flow within your business? Also, would you go with PayPal or Stripe? So firstly, Liv, the ultimate way of dealing with that, see you, Jake. The ultimate way of dealing with that is just deal with it up front. And so what I mean by that is, like, just tell them, like, this is a phrase you can use over and over and over to get clients to do what you want, is just say, here's how we normally work. So an example of this, here's how we normally work. We send you a payment link, the billing's automatic. If you just say, like, that's how we normally do it, most clients will be like, okay, right? So you're introducing right now a variable in your machine that says, like, hey, we have manual billing, which means you got to manually send it to people, which you can forget, you can be late, stuff can happen. They may forget in paying you. You may have to follow up with them. You may have to chase them, all those things. And so much of that is easier just set up by automatic billing. So step 1 is put that in the front of your machine. Now, step 2 is, like, how do you get clients who have been on it? Usually, one of the best ways is to just tell them, like, hey, we're switching over to this automated billing thing because it'll automatically create invoices for you. It's better for your taxes. It's more predictable. It's more systematic. We find we just miss details. We forget, and we'll make it really simple and easy for your accounting. It's like, make it as it's helpful for both of us, right? Not just for me. And then just most clients will be like, okay. And if they're not okay with it, you might want to wonder, like, why would somebody not okay with, like, billing being automatic? Either they're not okay with you and your service. That happens sometimes. They're not okay with being billed, and they're, like, still in the Stone Ages and they want to do it old school. Like, that should maybe set off some alarm bells that, like, they're not willing to grow and change, which are usually not the kind of clients you want in this kind of business. Or they're not planning on fucking paying you, right? That's a big reason too, right? So you want to avoid those predictable things and not get screwed over. Raul says, how do you reconcile that with rev share models? Do you have a specific cadence of billing that you find just works? Do you just transition to retain after a baseline of increased revenue profit is reached? I'll tell you the easiest way to handle that, Raul, is to approach people who have like affiliate software set up in general. I'm not saying this is the right answer for everybody, because some niches just don't have affiliate stuff, but that's the easiest way. Then all the payouts are automated and you don't even have to talk to anybody. It happens automatically, and all of those things at the end of 30 days, like bing, you get an invoice, whatever. So that's the simplest and easiest way if you can do that. Having said that, I've said this before, and I mentioned it in the book, but it's one of the hardest things for people to get around their head is 10% of clients will be assholes to you, and 10% of clients will be really cool to you, and 80% of them will fall into the middle. And a lot of that is dependent on how you set the expectation frame for how shit's going to go down. I'll give you an example. And this is my magic go-to phrase. I use it again and again, which is, here's how we do things around here. This is how we work. So, for example, is if I say, here's how we work, once we finish the campaign, I expect payment within 7 days. Is any of that an issue with you? And they'll usually say no. And then they'll just pay you within 7 days because you told them that's how it does. If you don't set that frame, then don't be surprised if they haven't paid you in 7 days. And then you're going like, hey, can you settle that invoice? What's going on? So a lot of it is when you have issues with people paying you, which I'm not saying you do, but if you have any of those issues, it's almost always because what you did 10 steps before that led them to believe that that's okay. Like if you say, hey, I'm going to bring you 10 people in the next little bit, and then I'm going to send you an invoice right after, and that invoice, we typically collect those within 7 days. Is any of that an issue with you? And they say no, they'll just do it because they said they're going to do it, right? So you do have to do sometimes a little bit of manual billing on the revenue share stuff, simply on the basis that like You don't know how well the campaign is going to perform. It's not like a set $2,000 a month. But the flip side of doing the manual billing is if you pick the right revenue share partners, then you're invoicing a lot more. And so I find, if you're invoicing $14,000 for that month, you're okay with sending a manual invoice more than saying collecting $2,000, right? So it tends to work like that. And by the way, the success of revenue share deals in general comes down to client selection more than any other detail. And I would argue that that's also true of retainer, but it becomes more in the forefront when you do a retainer or revenue share deal, because a lot of times people sign the wrong clients and they might pay you for 2 or 3 months on a retainer and then cancel. And that's still, you selected the wrong client, which is why they canceled, because they just weren't set up to succeed to begin with. But in a revenue share deal, you don't even get those 2-3 months if you choose the wrong client. So it's very, very important to choose the right partners. And by the way, we do have some criteria inside of the members area. Remind me to send that to you. Send me a message and I'll make sure you get those details. But for the most part, like, as long as you keep the billing stupid simple and just like, hey, we sent you this much business, here's the payout. I haven't had any issues with it. The biggest issue we actually had in revenue share deal with getting paid out, just so you guys know, I had a client who we did really, really well with. And then they went to pay me over Stripe, and we found out I have a Canadian Stripe account and they have an American Stripe account, which meant they couldn't do ACH and just send the money all at once. And then we went to try to send it, and it put all these arbitrary imposed limits. So they had to pay me $1,000 one day, and then $1,000 the next day, and then $1,000 the next day, and then $1,000 the day after that. And I forget the amount we did, but they had to keep doing that until we had hit like the full payment amount. And that was the hardest part of the whole thing. So for the most part, like revenue share deals, people are mostly happier to pay you because they've collected money first, right? So it's like they got a bunch of money. They're usually, in my experience, pretty cool. But having said that, as I mentioned, we have the criteria. Don't reinvent the wheel. And for those of you guys who missed the intro, that's all the time I got for questions right now. For those of you guys who missed the intro, we're putting together an outreach guide. It's about 80% finished. We'll either drop this week or early next week. It's co-authored with Matt McQuinn from Coldlytics. It's about how to do outreach, how we do it. I'm not saying like it's the only way, but man, it's working for us. And I think anybody can adopt it with the right kind of mindset. And I believe it's more energy efficient than the way most people do. Like a lot of people do spray and pray, and they need to worry about emails and spam servers and compliance and warming up emails and like, fuck all that shit. Like, if you got time for that, go for it. But I don't. I got 3 kids. I got other businesses. I need to be precise and aim my shit where it's going to have the biggest impact per time. And what you'll find is, I think it's just a better way of doing it anyway, because it creates, we use outreach to bring people to us. I know that sounds counterintuitive because you're messaging people, but we use it to create inbound opportunities. And I think that's one to many, as I mentioned, like a small example of that. Like it's the difference between message 10,000 dentists versus get on a podcast where 10,000 dentists listen to it and then create a podcast episode that then 10,000 dentists listen to and come to yourself or come to you. So, like I think it's just a better way of doing it. I don't know. And so that's going to drop. And then also, as I mentioned, we're close to a waiting list in the Wolfpack. So if you guys are thinking about it, check that out. I've been meaning to update the video. It's probably like 9 months old because we're working on some new things, but that's what I had time for. Oh, and just a quick question, Jake. Do you think Matt's pricing model would work with a pay-per-lead system, except we automatically choose how fast you get the leads instead of you having to set up the list and debit them yourself? Yes. And if you're interested in pay-per-lead, my friend Dan Wardrope has a group called Pay-Per-Lead Ninjas, and they got a bunch of really cool shit inside of there, and he's probably the master at pay-per-lead. The challenge with pay-per-lead, I'll tell you, like, is the cash flow situation can get dicey because you're trying to bill for leads and things like that, and then you're also paying for ads and things like that if you're doing paid ads. That is a quagmire that is but the solution to that is the same thing. It's like knowing which clients to pick in the first place, and then they'll pay you on time, and then you'll have less cash flow issues. And the right kind of clients you can scale to $20,000-$30,000 a month with. Yeah, exactly. Matt Coffey knows. Listen to a guy who's been around the block, a rock star like him. Pay-per-lead works, but you better have your shit together. If you choose the wrong people or do it the wrong way, all you're going to do is just bleed advertising money and have nothing to show for it. So, anyways, that's all I got for you guys. I appreciate you guys. I hope you have an awesome week. Happy Monday, and keep kicking ass, and may the force be with you. Oh, actually, before I hit the end thing, I should just say special thanks to Ilko. A lot of you guys have commented that I slouch in my chair and stuff like that, and there's actually a reason for it. That I've been that casual for a long time. I had a shitty office chair, and I don't know if like any of you guys are like that, but I don't really buy shit for myself. I'm just I don't really use my money on myself. Very rarely do I buy something for me. I love spoiling my kids. I love spoiling my lady. I love spoiling the people around me. I take them to dinner and I do things, but I almost never buy shit for myself other than books. Books are like my go-to. I'll drop money for books. And Ilka B bought me a new computer chair so I can actually like really sit in it for real and like lean against it. So big shout out to her. Anyways, again, much love. Happy Monday. May the force be with you. Appreciate you guys.
Hey guys, if you like this video, you'll also like my book on Amazon called Beyond the Agency Box, which you can also find by my name, Frankie Finn, and it's got a lot of awesome reviews, and it really just goes deeper on a lot of the things we're talking about, everything you need to grow and start a lifestyle agency, from the stages you'll go through to getting clients, to how to create winning offers, to high-value deliverables, to wowing clients, to building teams, to building systems, and building a boring factory that's like a 7-figure money machine for you. So if you're interested, I put links for you in the video description, as well as it'll be in the pinned top comment below, and make sure to check those out.